we're gonna talk about page 2 on the listing contract, the residential listing contract. At the top of the page, 2F is 180 degrees for our protection period. That is always what we want you to fill in there. If you go to paragraph D, 50% goes in there, but we rarely, if ever, take money from the seller if they get the down money that the buyers put down when there is a default. Now, let's talk about paragraph 6. This is where the seller decides what to offer buyer brokers as compensation. Remember, it's totally negotiable, and after you come to terms with what they're willing to offer the buyer agent as compensation, then you can go back to page 1 and fill in the total broker fee. Now, I'm going to give you an example, and it's just an example so the math makes sense to you. If the seller decides they're going to offer 3% co-op to compensation to the buyer agent, and you have agreed with the seller that you would take 2% on the listing side, the broker's fee would then be 5%. 2 to you, 3 to the buyer agent. But be very careful, if you put 3% to the buyer agent in page 2, and you also put 3% on page 1, that means you're not getting anything. So think it through and do the math correctly, and then you won't have any trouble. But remember, it's totally negotiable. Now, paragraph 7 on the listing contract on page 2, that used to be the seller assist, they're now calling it concessions. Your seller does not have to offer any concessions at the time of the listing contract. They can, but they don't have to. Probably best practice is to wait for the buyer's ask in the agreement of sale, and then the seller can decide if they want to offer any concessions in addition to any buyer agency compensation they might offer. So we usually leave that blank. Now, let's talk about paragraph 8. D, rentals, and E, no new leases. This has become problematic. When you are talking about a listing that has leases, make sure the seller understands they can't enter into any new leases once the property is listed, and they have to give you the leases that they have so that everyone knows what those leases say. Do not ignore paragraph D and E. Make sure you get the leases from the seller, and make sure they understand they can't enter into any new ones or change the ones they have, even if they're month to month. Okay? And don't forget to initial the bottom of the page, you and the seller. Thanks.